Carnets at Roanoke Insurance Group, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Before we begin, I want to cover a few important details. This session will last for 50 minutes, followed by a 10-minute period for questions. Feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A panel, and we will do our best to address as many as we can during the Q&A segment at the end. I would like to remind you that your attendance today will earn you 1 NEI credit. Instructions for reporting attendance to the NEI will be included in the follow-up communication that will be sent early next week. Before we begin the presentation, we would appreciate your participation in a brief survey or a brief poll to help us collect valuable feedback. Thank you for your participation. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Kelly Milianti, who serves as our ATA Carnet Manager. Kelly?
Thank you, Candice. If you want to go ahead and take that poll real quick and see how many people have actually used an ATA Carnet. We'll just give a couple seconds to see.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we're going up there. Wow. 63% is yes. That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what is an ATA Carnet? An ATA Carnet is an international customs document that provides duty and tax-free customs clearance for your temporary exports into foreign countries. An ATA Carnet often is referred to as a passport for your goods. It simplifies the entry by eliminating the need to post some form of financial guarantee. So, for example, a temporary bond or a financial guarantee. The ATA Carnet is recognized in over 100 destinations for virtually all types of goods, whether it's hand-carried or cargo shipped. The ATA Carnet doesn't only reduce costs, it also facilitates customs clearance in both the U.S. and the foreign countries and is valid on multiple trips for up to 1 year. It covers a broad range of merchandise, including trade show booths, personal computers, satellites, and so much more. The ATA Carnet fees are paid prior to your departure, so you don't have to worry about costs before you leave. And the added bonus is the ATA Carnet can also be used in place of the U.S. CBP Form 4455, the Certificate of Registration, which is allow you to register your goods with the U.S. CBP when traveling to a non-ATA Carnet country.
That's great information. So in what way would an ATA Carnet help?
So choosing an ATA Carnet over the alternative options has a variety of benefits. As I mentioned, reducing costs to the exporters, ATA Carnets eliminate value-added duties, taxes, and VAT, and the posting of some form of security normally required at the time of importation. Arrangements are made in advance of travel, so no unexpected surprises when arriving in the foreign country. Also, the U.S. registration ATA Carnet acts as a customs registration for CBP 4455 when traveling to non-ATA Carnet countries, which means you can use a Carnet even though it may be going to a country that doesn't accept Carnets. You can still use it as a registration to go in and out of the U.S. Mm-hmm. The goods are for duty-free importation back in the USA, and then you can also do a split and partial shipment, which is since you don't have to take all the goods of the merchandise listed on your general list on each trip. So one ATA Carnet can cover the need of several trips for different purposes, and is valid for 1 year with unlimited entries and departures. The ATA Carnet can travel as often as you like and as many Carnet member countries as necessary during this period.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. So can you tell me what type of items can go onto a Carnet?
So the ATA Carnet covers 3 types of items: commercial samples, professional equipment, and exhibitions and fairs. So for example, commercial samples, any and all items which are temporarily imported for the purpose of demonstration or for the solicitation of orders. Examples might include a heart monitor system, jewelry, fashion garments for a fashion show, fashion week in Paris or Italy, for example, pipes and fittings, or goods to be exhibited at a foreign trade show or conference. The goods are also used for professional equipment, which typically are tools of the trade, and that includes equipment or goods needed to work well in a foreign country. Examples include equipment for the press or for television, scientific, mining, engineering, electrical, surgical, entertainment, and sporting equipment, such as race cars and boats, and exhibition booths used to display merchandise as a trade show. The third one, exhibition and fairs, it is trade, industrial, agricultural, or craft exhibitions, as well as fairs, world event exhibitions for a charitable purpose, or to promote learning, craft, scientific, or cultural activity, or religious knowledge or worship.
Wow. So are there any unusual items that you've seen on an ATA Carnet? And what cannot be covered?
So some interesting items that we have seen on an ATA Carnet has been, for example, animals. So for a circus, or horses for races or shows. One of the most unique items we've seen on an ATA Carnet is body parts for Body World. So there are actual human body parts that have been sent for an exhibition to the foreign country to be put on display and returned back to the US. All items that go into a foreign country and are coming back can go on an ATA Carnet. So the items that are not covered are exports that cannot that are consumed in the other countries, such as handouts and pamphlets. So if you go to a trade show and you bring post-its or pens or any type of giveaways, those should not be listed on an ATA Carnet because those will not be returning back to the US. Other items such as food items, plants, or any other perishables, personal vehicles are not allowed on an ATA Carnet. So for example, if you're taking your vehicle to be driven on public roads for your own purposes, for like vacation or travel, those cannot go on an ATA Carnet. Also, any items that have been sent on the Carnet have to come exactly the same way that they came back. So no replacements and no changes to the item. So you can't add any parts to to the item that's going out, and you can't make any substantial changes.
Okay. And can you tell me, Kelly, where can we use an ATA Carnet?
There are over 100 countries and territories that the ATA Carnet can be used. Each one has its own rules and requirements. So some countries have unique timeframes. For example, Mexico only allows the goods in their country for a certain period of time. So although the Carnet is valid for 1 year, they can limit the amount of time that the goods go into the country. Also, some countries have special documentation and certain security deposits that are required. So to find a listing of our carnets, countries that accept carnets, you can go to our website, and we have on each country, if you click on it, it'll show you exactly what is required for each one and who accepts carnets and who does not.
Wow. Yeah, so it's over 100 amount of countries. So once a carnet is created, what does the customer receive?
So the ATA Carnet is a color-coded document. Each color represents a specific part in the customs transaction. So for example, the green cover is the master part of the ATA Carnet. The information housed on the green cover is valid for the entire validity period of the ATA Carnet, typically 1 year from the date of issue. The yellow pages are for the US CBP use and record the exportation and reimportation of the ATA Carnet shipment. White pages of the Carnet are for foreign customs and is used to record the temporary importation and re-exportation of the ATA Carnet shipment. Some carnets will include blue pages, which are the transits and are used for operation functions like a transit and bond. The yellow, white, and blue pages are made up of counterfoils and vouchers. The counterfoils are the box the customs validates and leaves in the ATA carnet as the holder eventually returns to the National Guarantee Association for proof of import and re-exportation on the ATA carnet shipment. The vouchers, however, are the pages that customs remove to keep for their own records, and these pages have the information of the holder, authorized representative, and intended use, and a copy of the list of the goods attached. I know some of the questions that we do get on these pages are, let's say, for example, you're taking the goods in and out of the U.S. Customs will stamp the U.S. counterfoil. There are no vouchers on the U.S. side. So I know we get a lot of calls saying we're missing vouchers with our U.S. Counterfoils. There are no vouchers on the U.S. side. The vouchers are only included for the foreign country going in the country and if you have transits inside of your carnet packet. So here's an example of the color-coded carnet document.
This is really cool. I love that. So once the carnet is created, the customer receives it. How can it be used? How do we use this?
So when it comes to specific usage of an ATA carnet document, it's important to understand each color-coded section and to make sure that the parties involved are taking appropriate actions each step of the trip. The sections are broken up as the follows. The green cover, which I mentioned is the master section of the ATA carnet. The information housed on the green cover is valid for the entire validity period of the ATA carnet, typically 12 months or 1 full year from the date of issue. When departing the U.S. Customs will stamp and valid the green cover of the ATA carnet. A few points I would like to point out on the green cover. Box A is where the holder information and the address is. So that is the company who owns the goods and their address. And then box A, lowercase a, is the carnet number. So all carnets have their own identifying carnet number. There is a section on the carnet, box B, which is the authorized representative, which is the company or person who is authorized to use the carnet on behalf of the holder. This could be a freight forwarder, third party, customs broker. Anyone who is listed in that box can use the carnet on behalf of the carnet holder. In box B at the bottom, in the red box where it's red highlighted, that is where U.S. Customs will validate your carnet the very first time it leaves the U.S. You want to make sure that that box is validated before the goods leave the country. The carnet is signed by not only the issuing company, but also by the holder or the authorized representative on the ATA carnet. If you look at the back cover of the carnet, that includes the description of the goods, including serial numbers and part numbers, the insured value, the weight, and the origin. This page on the back green cover should never be amended. So never put any marks on this, crossing out any lines, items, making any notes on that. That would invalidate the green cover of this carnet.
Great. So just one note that on that green cover, you do see in the middle section there that there are countries listed. That's not all of the countries that are under ATA carnet. So a lot of people do ask that question, how come I don't see my country there? Does it mean that it's not an ATA carnet country? Just reach out to us for any questions on that. So here we have the foreign counterfoils. And
this is the, sorry, this is
oh,
the
I'm
US
sorry. This is the US. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
So for the US, is there any information the client can provide to help customs with clearance on these US forms, US counterfoils?
Yes, so the yellow pages, the yellow counterfoils are for use by CBP, and they record the exportation and reimportation of the ATA carnet shipment. CBP notes the items leaving the U.S. in section box A of the yellow exportation counterfoil and will stamp box B. Once the carnet has returned back to the U.S., the carnet will be presented to CBP. CBP indicates only the items re-entering in box 1 on the yellow reimportation counterfoil and stamps box 6. So for example, if line items 1 through 10 are leaving, We want to see that 1 through 10 has eventually come back into the US. This is what is used to close out your ATA carnet to show that the goods had left the US and everything has returned. So you want
Now
to make
on this, oh, I'm sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
It's okay. So you want to make sure that when you list the numbers on there, and we'll get into more detail later in the presentation on a split or partial shipment, to indicate exactly what is leaving on your carnet in this box.
So is there anything that the customer can write in here before providing it to customs?
This is where they would write the number of items that are leaving. So if all items are leaving, you can write all, or you can write number 1 through 10, however many items are listed on there. You can put in the means of transportation, any remarks that you need in there, and then customs will sign and stamp it out.
Okay, very good. So here we have the foreign counterfoils, and it looks like vouchers. Is there any important details to look out for? And what can the client write or not write in those boxes?
On the white pages, which are for the foreign country, customs use and record the temporary import and re-exportation of the ATA carnet shipment. The ATA carnet is presented to customs at the time of entry. So when your goods enter into the foreign country, importation box 1 would be presented to customs. This is where they will check the line items that are listed on the carnet, make sure they're all listed, the items are all there, and then customs will sign and stamp. There's one thing to be aware of. Although the carnet is valid for 1 year, there is a section that says final date of re-exportation. And if there is a date in there that customs entered, those goods have to be out of the country by that date. So be sure that you check that date when you leave customs to make sure that the goods are out of the country by that time. So when foreign customs stamps and signs the carnet, they will take out the foreign importation voucher. On the importation voucher, it'll show again the holder information, the authorized representative, and section D through F would be completed by either the holder or the rep. Foreign customs will validate, remove the voucher, and we'll keep that on record to show what has come into their country.
Great. So if a client doesn't want to take all of their items out of the country, how can they do this? And is the general list important when doing this?
So the items don't have to all go into the country. We'll cover that in the next slide for the split and partial shipment. But real quick, I just wanted to cover coming out of the foreign country. So whatever has shown going into the foreign country has to go in. So once importation box 1 has been stamped in, once the goods are done doing their job in the foreign country, re-exportation box 1 would be stamped out. This completes the trip in the foreign country. So it shows what went into the country, and then it'll show what has exited. As well as the re-exportation voucher will be pulled out and put on record for this carnet. To answer Candice's question, so there are split and partial shipments that are possible on an ATA carnet, and I know we do get a lot of questions regarding this. As long as everything is out of the country on or before the expiration date, these split or partial shipments are recorded on the transaction, specifically counterfoil and vouchers. So let's say, for example, if you look at the partial shipment here on the counterfoil, it shows item number 1, 3, 4, and 6 through 25 entered into the foreign country, which means items 1, 3, 4, 6 through 25 need to come out. Now, be sure to let customs know if there is a split or partial shipment going into the country, because sometimes customs will not check the goods and they may stamp them all going in. If that happens and the goods are leaving and they check the items to see what's coming out, and items 1, 3, 4, 6, and through 25 are the only items there could be a possible claim because there's no proof that the rest of the items did not enter into the country, as foreign customs had stamped that in as all. So that's something to make sure that you pay extra attention to, that the items are listed properly that are entering into the country and that are properly stamped out of the country. On the back of the voucher, this is where you can amend. You can strike out any items that will not be traveling on that shipment. Again, this is only done on the voucher. This cannot be done on the green cover, as it will invalidate your carnet. So for split and partial shipments, the holder rep can strike out those items that are not being imported on the white voucher general list.
Now, there is one question in the chat that's being asked. If there is ever a time where you can request an extension if customs enters a specific exportation date out of the country on the white paper,
Yes.
is the question.
Yes. So as long as, because the carnet is valid for 1 year, the extension would be done through customs at that time. So let's say, for example, Mexico allows the goods in the country for 6 months. Before that 6 months date, you have to go to customs prior to that and request the additional time. Customs will then mark that on the counterfoil that they're extending the time. We'll go into a little more detail later about the extensions for extending a carnet that's expiring and extending a carnet that has an expiration date that customs has put on the carnet. So for this example, yes, you can go to customs and ask for it to be extended longer, and it's up to customs whether or not they will approve that or not. But just be sure that you keep an eye on that expiration date in that box. And we do have sometimes there are issues where sometimes customs will actually put the date that the goods entered into the foreign country as the final date of being exported. So in case that ever happens, just check that box, reach out to customs before you leave, let them know most likely it's done in an error, but you don't want to have any type of claim or fee because the goods did not exit on the date that has been put into that box.
Mhm. So just a side note, not all countries are ATA carnet countries, correct?
That is correct. So when you apply for your carnet, there is a list of all the countries in the carnet application. If you don't see that, check our website. There are some that fall within other countries, or reach out to us and we'll let you know whether or not that country is covered.
Very good. So once the goods return to the US, what happens with the carnet?
All carnets need to be returned to Roanoke for cancellations. Before that, before you return it, we suggest that you make a copy of the ATA carnet for your records, and then the ATA carnets that are not returned to Roanoke will be kept open for 1 year after the expiration date, and the security deposit will not be released. So let's say, for example, you lost your carnet, the goods came back, you don't have a carnet to return. That carnet is going to remain open for 13 months after that expiration date. So we have to make sure that there's no claim issued on those goods. Once that year, 13 months are up, that carnet will automatically close out. I included at the bottom of the page here Roanoke's address. You could address it to either the carnet team or the carnet resolution team. You could send it to me. You could send it to anyone on our team, but this is the address that it would be sent to.
Awesome. So now, what are some good tips on avoiding claims for carnets?
So
And
let's
what is a
cover
claim? Sorry about that.
what is a claim. A claim on the ATA carnet is when a foreign customs office submits notice to the National Guarantee Association that there's no record of the goods leaving the country or being out of the country before the expiration date. In this case, duties, taxes, and penalties may be owed to foreign customs unless substantial proof can be provided that these goods did not indeed leave in a timely manner. So let's say, for example, you get your carnet stamped into the UK. You return the car. We have a carnet that shows the goods left the US. They entered into the UK. There's no stamp on the re-exportation of the UK, and there's no stamp showing the goods returned into the US. That's going to be marked as a possible claim on our end. And if there's no proof that the goods returned to the US, could go into the claim status, which would then have to pay the duties, taxes, and penalties to that foreign country.
Wow. So, okay. So that's what a claim is. So what are some good tips on avoiding a claim? How can we get around this or through it?
So the ideal proof would be re-exportation from a foreign country. So that means correctly completing and stamping the re-exportation counterfoil, which is the white counterfoil, before the expiration date of the ATA carnet, or the restricted date that is noted in box B of the white importation counterfoil. Secondly, proof of USCBP validation re-importation counterfoil back into the US. So again, let's say, for example, the carnet stamped out of the US, it goes into the UK. It's never stamped out of the UK, but it is stamped back into the US. So we do have proof that the goods came back into the US. So that would either mitigate the claim or we can avoid the claim completely by the goods showing that it did return back into the US. So even though foreign customs did not stamp the carnet, we always, always, always recommend that US Customs stamps the carnet back into the country. Another thing to keep in mind that even though the goods left, if the goods leave the country and the carnet has expired, US Customs will still stamp that carnet back into the US. So regardless, US Customs will stamp it. So just make sure you get that US stamp back in showing the goods returned. In the event that both the white re-exportation counterfoil and the yellow re-importation counterfoil are not validated, then CBP Form 3227, which is the Certificate of Disposition, can be completed on site at CBP. And on that, we want to make sure that you list the carnet number along with the items that are listed on the general list exactly the way that they are listed. And then you can send us a copy back with the carnet showing that the US Certificate of Disposition has been completed. The last option you may have to mitigate the claim, but it might not resolve a claim, again, is US CBP validating that the goods came back into the US. Other things would be any supporting documents that accompany the ATA carnet shipment should have the ATA carnet number. So if any goods were sold in the US, I'm sorry, in the foreign country, payments, bill of lading, a packing list, an airway bill, anything that is used to show that the goods have been that are permanently entered into the foreign country. So there could be two things. The goods could be sold in the foreign country, which obviously is not the intention of the carnet, but it does happen. If the goods are sold in the foreign country, a receipt should be included with your carnet that lists the carnet number and the item or items that have been sold in the country exactly the way they are on the general list. Foreign customs should be notified that the goods were sold. That receipt could be presented to foreign customs, and foreign customs would make note on that counterfoil showing that the goods were sold in the country and if duties and taxes were paid at that time. So foreign customs can charge a fee at that time when the goods enter. If that is not the case, you may be contacted at a later time that there are duties and taxes and penalties that are due because the goods did not re-export. And if we have item proof showing that they were sold or temporarily or permanently put into the country, that would mitigate the claim. Other things that you can do if the goods were stolen, a police report. File, if your items are on display, or let's say, for example, you leave your equipment in your vehicle. Someone breaks into the car and steals your camera equipment. You have a police report showing that the goods were stolen. We can use that in order to avoid or resolve a claim. If the goods are in the foreign country, that longer than the expiration date, you can apply for a replacement carnet, which we will talk about in a little bit. That allows the goods to stay longer. And the last thing that we always recommend is to keep copies or photos of your carnet. So we do recommend every time you get the carnet stamp, take a picture of the stamp. Any type of document showing that proof will help avoid or mitigate that claim.
Now, we do have a question in the chat about claims. They are asking, what is the cutoff for all claims when the carnet is expired?
Candice, I'll let you actually take that as you handle the carnet cancellations and the process. So I'll let you go ahead and answer that one.
Well, the carnet, once the carnet is expired, you have 13 months after expiry date. So if no claims are filed by that time, then the carnet will go ahead and time bar closed at that time. But you have until 13 months after expiry date for the claim, for the cutoff. But if they have filed a claim against it, you have, until, the USCIB gets the proof of if the goods did come back or documentation showing that the duty's been paid. If you don't have proof, then the claim is actually standing. So you will have some time to pay that claim and to handle it with the USCIB and that country. So, a carnet can be open, and a claim can be filed until there's either some resolve or until the surety steps in and handles the claim. If the surety does step in and handle that claim, then, that holder will be sent to collections so that the claim amount the surety paid out does come back. So essentially, that's how long it will be on there. Yeah. Okay. So what are some other services or coverages that we can provide to our customers when applying for a Carnet?
So all carnets require a carnet bond, a form of security. We offer that, and that can be done with the carnet application. So as you're filling the online application, it will ask you if you would like to do a carnet process with bond process with carnet. In that case, we can take care of the bond for you. We also handle additional counterfoils. So let's say, for example, when you apply for a carnet, at that time you only know about certain trips. Since the carnet is valid for 1 year, you can order additional counterfoils so you can continue to travel that year throughout the year. So let's say, for example, right now you're going to the UK and you're coming back. And then you find out you have another trip that you want to schedule, so you need additional counterfoils. So you can continue to add on additional counterfoils within that 12-year validity. The other thing we offer is a duplicate carnet. So the duplicate carnet is when the original carnet is lost. So for example, you're in the foreign country, you're getting ready to leave, you realize that the carnet is missing. Now you have no carnet to get stamped out of the country. All you have to do is reach out to us, go on our website, and apply for a duplicate. The duplicate would take the place of the original carnet. The only thing with a duplicate carnet is it will protect against any carnet claim as long as it's stamped properly, but we won't be able to close out that original carnet since it is missing and we don't know exactly what stamps were on that. So with a duplicate carnet, it'll get you out of the country without having paid the duties and taxes, and it should prevent you from having any carnet claim. But we do have to keep that carnet open for that 13 months after the expiration date. Now, if you get a duplicate and the original carnet is found and both are returned, we could go ahead and close that out. The other thing we offer is lost document coverage. The lost document coverage is pretty much it's a good thing to have. It's a $35 fee, which covers any duplicate carnet that you may need. So if you lose a carnet, and instead of paying the fees all over again for the duplicate, you get the lost document coverage, and that would cover your duplicate going forward, with the exception of paying a shipping fee for us to just ship the carnet to you. The other thing we offer is a replacement carnet, which is the extension. So we talked earlier about getting the carnet extended. This is if the carnet itself has expired. If that 1 year is up, you could apply for a replacement carnet. We recommend that you reach out to us at least a month in advance because not all countries actually accept the replacement carnet, and some of them require additional approval through customs, and we work with the U.S. Council to get that taken care of. So we recommend at least a month in advance. If you could do it earlier, that's great. But this will allow the goods to stay in that country for up to another year. So basically how the replacement works, you apply for the replacement on our website. It's going to be exactly the same as the carnet that you currently have, but it will have a new carnet number. On the cover of the carnet, it will link the original carnet number with this replacement carnet, and both carnets would be presented to foreign customs. Foreign customs will then stamp the original, showing that there was a replacement applied for with that replacement number, and then the replacement will get stamped into the foreign country, which will then stay with the goods until they're ready to come back to the U.S. You want to make sure that both are presented to customs, so that way there's no claim on the original carnet for being in the goods being in the foreign country past the expiration date. Again, reach out to us at least 1 month prior so we can find out if that's an option for you, as not all countries accept replacements. The last thing that we offer is cargo insurance, and that covers the goods itself. So it covers the goods if they're lost, stolen, or damaged. So from the time the goods leave the country while they're in the air going or traveling, however they're traveling, they leave the US, go into the foreign country, travel from country to country. If they're in storage, the goods are covered. The only time the goods are not covered is while they're in use. So let's say, for example, you're filming a documentary, you got your camera set up, and you're actually using it, and someone bumps into you and knocks the camera over. It's not covered while it's actually being used. But if it's in storage and it falls off a shelf, it will be covered at that time. If it's damaged, if it's stolen, that would be covered as well.
So just a step back, Kelly, when talking about the replacements, there's a question in the queue that asks, is there a guarantee that foreign customs will honor the extended carnet?
For the majority of the countries, yes. So there's most countries we don't have to get approval for. There are some, however, that are pretty strict. One of them in particular, Australia. And that's when we work with the U.S. Council for approval. So the U.S. Council will reach out to Customs. They will be in contact with them. And once we get that approval from U.S. Customs, I'm sorry, from foreign customs, we will go ahead and issue that replacement. So on the countries that are a little more strict with replacements, we get that approval in advance before releasing the replacement to the customer.
Very good.
Now, if we issue the replacement and it is presented way past the expiration date, like if it, when we issue the replacements, we issue them within the time period that the customer will receive the replacement in time before the original carnet expires. Now, if the original carnet expires and the replacement is presented to Customs 2 months after that, Customs could reject that. So that is a possibility. So as long as you're following the guidelines and making sure that the replacement is presented in time, there shouldn't be any problem with a replacement being rejected.
Great, thank you. So now we have a good idea on how a carnet works and how to use it. How can we apply for one?
So now that you know how a carnet works, how do you attain it? Obtaining the carnet is really easy. If you're already work with a freight forwarder or customs broker, then they can provide you with an ATA carnet. Even if you decide to hand carry the goods yourself, or you can obtain a carnet directly from us. So you're a broker. If you're a broker or freight forwarder, you can apply on behalf of your client. The carnet will be in your client's name as the holder, and you could be the authorized representative if you're handling the shipment, or you could just apply for the carnet on their behalf. If you are coming directly to us, you can do that as well. So either way, we can issue the carnet. In order to get the carnet, you would have to register for your login by going to Carnets Online. It's our fast and easy carnet application system. And then to pair your carnets related protections like bond and cargo, and we explore like different solutions hubs. To begin the registration for the username and password, you complete the online form for the registration, and we will send you back a login information with your user ID and password within 24 hours.
Great, that's pretty fast. So, all right. Thank you, Kelly. So if you guys have any questions at this time, please submit them through the question and A panel now. I will go over some questions that did come into the queue. So one of our first questions here is, if a carnet has items subject to FDA, how does that process work?
So if there are any requirements or license or permits that are required, that you still have to do. The ATA carnet does not take it doesn't take the place of those requirements. So if you have any licenses or permits, or for example, like CITES or anything like that, you would still have to go through the process of getting those taken care of. The carnet is completely separate from that. So you actually don't even really need that information when applying for the carnet. That would be done separately, and then you would present the information along with the carnet to Customs.
Great, thank you. All right, our next question is, Candice available for a virtual autograph session after the Q&A at the end? Sure. Just no pictures, please. No screenshots, please. All right, our next question. So if the packing the packaging gets damaged during shipping and it has to be repackaged, and that changes the weight declared on the general list, the green cover. Can it be amended on another counterfoil?
So the weight itself on the counterfoil are on the general list is the item itself without the packaging. On the voucher itself, there's a section for detail for packing details, and that's where you can enter the actual packing um, information. So the weight of the actual packing, the packaging and stuff like that. So the items on the general list weight is that the item itself. You don't want to include the packing.
Very good. So next question, is there a best practice for the level of detail to include when listing equipment? We travel with hand carry checked camera equipment. Do we need to include small items like cables, etc., on the carnet?
You can, absolutely. You can list anything that's traveling, that's coming back, can be listed on the carnet. You just want to make sure that, if there's cables, list the amount of cables that are on there. Customs may check it, they may count it, they may not. So you just want to make sure that if you're listing those, which you absolutely can, to be very specific on the number of pieces that you're entering. So let's say, for example, you're listing a camera with its chargers or cables that go along with it. When you're filling out the Carnet application, the general list is going to be a total value and the total weight and total amount of everything that is listed on that line item. So you want to make sure that you are as detailed as possible. But anything that is leaving and coming back can be listed on the ATA Carnet.
So the next question here, it says, I've seen carnets that list a case/box in the general list. Is that necessary?
It's not necessary. There are people who do list it on the carnet, but really Customs wants to know what's inside that case. They want to know what's inside the box. If it's the means of carrying it, it doesn't have to be listed on the carnet.
Great. Is there a guarantee that foreign customs will honor an extended carnet?
Um, if I think we answered that question earlier, depending on if what country it is, if it requires the approval, we do get that in advance, and once that has been approved, they will accept it. Like I said, there are certain countries that are very strict with their replacements, so we do work with the U.S. Council, who works with Customs to get that replacement approved before we release it to the clients. Any other country, as long as it is presented within the time frame of the original carnet, there shouldn't be any problems with a replacement being rejected.
Great. Now, one of our customers here has said, would you please explain the difference between a counterfoil and a voucher? This person is still confused on that. So if you can explain that to them.
Sure. So the counterfoil, on the counterfoil is where you're going to list the actual items that will be going in and out of the foreign country. The counterfoil will stay inside of the carnet. So the counterfoil has a matching voucher. So there's an importation voucher and an importation counterfoil. They will go together. The counterfoil will have all custom stamps on it, showing what goes into the country and what comes out of the country. The voucher will also be stamped by foreign customs, and on the back of the voucher, it shows all the information as the goods that are entering into the country. The voucher is for customs to keep for their records. The counterfoils are what is returned back to us in the carnet packet, so we can review and make sure all the custom stamps are on there properly, so we can close out a carnet without having any sort of carnet claim or penalty or anything like that.
Great, thank you. And just a few more questions. Let me check the Q&A here. Okay, so repairs and replacements aren't valid for carnet, but what about collaboration? Is this also considered significant transformation?
If it's
Calibration, I'm sorry, calibration.
if so they're not adding anything, if I'm understanding correctly, they're not adding anything to it. It's not changing the value of the goods or the item itself, then that should be okay to go on a carnet. It's just you can't go and add, a piece to a machinery or take a piece out or like anything that's, anything that changes the item itself. So as long as the value and the actual item is exactly the same, that would be okay to take the goods on a carnet.
Now, is it possible to add items to a carnet before the shipment importing back to the US?
So once the carnet has been issued, you cannot add any items. So in that case, that's where we kind of recommend, if you're not exactly sure what you might be taking, you could always list more than what's going. And that's where that partial or split shipment comes in. So I know we talked a little bit about the partial shipment. I think there was one thing I would like to mention as far as like the split shipment or partial shipment is they don't all, even if all items go into a foreign country, they don't all have to leave at the same time. So it's better to list more on your general list than less because you can't add it, you can't amend it to add additional items. You could take off, but you can't add on.
Mhm. Very good. All right, I'm checking the time here. We're getting close. How about a few more questions? Okay, so I'm getting a lot of questions about eCarnet. Can you
Okay.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So as of June 1st, there are some countries that are accepting e-carnets. Europe, UK, Denmark, I think is one. I should have written this down. But not all countries are on board right now, nor is the US, which is we're currently working on. So as of right now, as far as Roanoke, we are working closely with the U.S. Council to get our site up and running to start processing e-carnets. Until the U.S. is on board as far as accepting e-carnets, a paper carnet is still going to be required regardless of what country you go to. Once we are up and running on our end and everything is ready to go, we will have an announcement going out. We will be setting up trainings with the U.S. Council on how to use the e-carnet and the countries that'll be accepting it. So that you should be seeing shortly. But as of June 1st, there are some countries that are accepting it. We're just not quite ready to release that yet. But an announcement will go out once that is ready. And again, we're going to set up a few training sessions along with the U.S. Council to go over how the e-carnet will work.
Great, thank you. All right, one more question. Does the initiation of the carnet have to start in the US?
Yes. So if they're U.S. goods, the carnet has to be issued and validated in the U.S. Now, if you have goods coming into the U.S., then you would have to apply for a carnet in that foreign country. So if the goods are coming from Canada, the carnet would have to be applied for in Canada. Now, however, if you're a Canadian company, but the goods are here, you can apply for a carnet. So the preparer of the goods, the preparer of the carnet can be in another country, but the holder, the owner of the goods, has to be here in the U.S. And the carnet has to be validated in the U.S. in order for the foreign country to accept it.
Very good. All right, our last question. How quick is the process to obtain a carnet?
So the turnaround time for a carnet, as far as getting your login, that is within 24 hours. If it's urgent, you can reach out to us directly. We'll try to get it set up as soon as we can, but it's 24 hours to get your login information. Once you get your registration sent back to you, you go online and fill out the application, which shouldn't take you too long. You have the option to do rush or standard processing. Rush is next business day and standard is 2 business days. That's the typical turnaround time. However, depending on the value of your goods, if there's underwriting requirements as far as the bond goes, it might take a little longer if we need some more information from you. But typically, the turnaround time is from 24 to 48 hours, business hours.
Great. Great. Thank you, everyone. I mean, there's still questions coming in here, but I just want to thank you guys for joining us for today's webinar. We will soon share a recording along with additional resources, including the presentation materials and a link with the code for reporting your attendance to the NEI. We kindly request that you complete our survey, which will be linked in the follow-up email. Participants will have a chance to win one of two $50 e-gift cards. Additionally, you can access our ATA Carnet ebook through the shared URL in the team chat. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining. Thank you for all the questions, and you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.